Right. Strap yourselves in, political junkies, because what I'm about to show you is a moment when Sarah Pochin, Reform UK's first female MP who won her seat by the skin of her teeth with just 6 votes, decided to absolutely demolish Keir Starmer's migration policies with the precision of a political surgeon wielding a chainsaw. We're talking about a woman who's been in Parliament for barely 8 months, facing down the Prime Minister with questions so uncomfortable that you could practically see the sweat beading on Starmer's forehead from the public gallery. This isn't just political theatre. This is a masterclass in how to make the most powerful person in Britain squirm like a schoolboy caught cheating on his exams. Now, before we dive into this political bloodbath, let me paint you a picture of exactly who Sarah Pochin is, because her backstory reads like something out of a political thriller novel. This woman currently holds a record for the smallest margin of victory in modern British by-election history, having overturned Labour's 14,700 majority from the 2024 general election by just 6 votes. 6 votes. That's not a political victory. That's a statistical miracle wrapped in democratic legitimacy. She basically won her seat by the margin of error in a local pub quiz. But here's where it gets absolutely mental. This record-breaking political newcomer decided her first major parliamentary performance would be to launch a full-scale assault on Labour's migration policies that would make a military strategist weep with admiration. Sarah Pochin has declared that Britain cannot go on like this as she launched a scathing attack on Labour's betrayal of women's safety during what can only be described as the most uncomfortable prime ministerial questioning since someone asked Tony Blair about Iraq. The setting couldn't have been more perfect for political drama. There's Keir Starmer, probably thinking is going to field some softball questions about housing policy or the NHS, when suddenly this political newcomer stands up and basically asks him why he's prioritizing illegal migrants over British women's safety. It's like expecting a friendly chat about the weather and getting hit with a question about why you've been setting fire to the neighbourhood. Speaking at a Reform UK press conference that sent shockwaves through Westminster, Pochin didn't just criticize the government. She basically performed political surgery without anesthesia. We're facing now this invasion, and I don't use that word lightly, of 800 to 1,000 men coming in a week. We've had 26,000 this year, more than 400 on Saturday alone, she said, probably while Starmer's spin doctors were frantically Googling how to change a subject without looking obvious. But wait, it gets better. Always, depending on whose side you're on. Because Pochin didn't just throw around statistics like political confetti. She went straight for the jugular with a cultural argument that must have made every Labour MP in the room reach for their emergency PR handbook. The fact is that these men are generally from a Muslim culture, which values women quite differently from the way that Western men look at their women. And what we're seeing now is the sheer numbers of making communities afraid for their girlfriends, wives, and daughters. Now, you can practically hear the collective intake of breath from every political commentator in Britain. This isn't just policy criticism. This is a direct cultural confrontation that cuts through all the diplomatic waffle politicians usually hide behind. It's like watching someone walk into a dinner party and immediately start discussing exactly why everyone's marriage is failing. Uncomfortable? Absolutely. Effective at getting attention? You bet your bottom dollar it is. The real kicker came when Pochin started talking about Bedford, painting a picture that sounds like something out of a vigilante movie. In Bedford, there's a group now of British men who have actually set themselves up as almost street guardians on a Saturday night to protect their women from attack. We can't go on like this. Can you imagine being Keir Starmer and hearing that British men are forming vigilante groups because they don't trust your government to protect their families? That's not just a policy failure. That's a complete breakdown of the social contract. When challenged about whether her stance was racist, because apparently that's the only response modern politics has to uncomfortable questions, Pochin hit back with the kind of clarity that politicians usually spend millions on media training to avoid. It's fact. What else are we going to call it? It's an invasion on our culture, and it's a betrayal of the safety of our women and children. There's no diplomatic hedging, no carefully crafted sound bites, just straight talk that probably made every spin doctor in Westminster consider early retirement. But here's what makes this exchange absolutely devastating for Starmer. Pochin isn't some career politician who can be dismissed as playing political games. She's a political outsider who won her seat by literally 6 votes, which means she's got nothing to lose and everything to prove. When someone like that starts asking uncomfortable questions about your policies, you can't just brush them off with the usual parliamentary procedure nonsense. The timing of this confrontation is also politically perfect. A Labour minister has accused Reform MP Sarah Pochin of singling out Muslim migrants after she claimed they held medieval beliefs and pose a threat to women's safety in Britain. When the government's response to legitimate concerns about women's safety is to accuse the questioner of discrimination, you know they're on the back foot faster than a footballer facing a penalty kick. Dame Andrea Jenkins, backing up Pochin at the Reform UK conference, delivered what might be the most damning indictment of modern Britain. I don't feel safe. And as a mother, I no longer feel that our children live in a safe, beautiful haven, a Britain that I grew up in. When former government ministers are saying they don't feel safe in their own country, that's not just political posturing. That's a fundamental failure of governance. Pochin's solution is about as subtle as a brick through a Downing Street window. Turn these boats around. Deport anyone who makes it to our shores. They could do it now, and they can worry about their status when they are offshore, whether it's on a container ship or an island somewhere. You know what? I don't care where they go. The point is, do not let them into this country. It's the kind of direct language that makes immigration lawyers break out in cold sweats and human rights activists reach for their smelling salts. The government's response? Well, let's just say it was about as convincing as a chocolate teapot in a heat wave. A Home Office spokesman told GB News, "Since taking office, we have taken immediate action to fix the asylum system and have started closing down hotels and returning more than 35,000 people with no right to be here." It's the political equivalent of saying we're working on it while Rome burns down around you. What makes this whole confrontation particularly brilliant from a political strategy standpoint is how Pochin has managed to frame the debate. This isn't about racism or xenophobia. It's about women's safety. It's about communities forming vigilante groups because they don't trust the government to protect them. It's about mothers who no longer feel their children are safe. Try arguing against that without sounding like you don't care about women's safety. The broader implications of this political showdown are staggering. Here's a political newcomer who won by 6 votes, taking on the Prime Minister over one of the most sensitive issues in British politics, and making him look like he's defending the indefensible. It's like watching David take on Goliath, except David's using facts and statistics instead of a sling, and Goliath's armed with nothing but political correctness and wishful thinking. Pochin's argument about human rights laws is particularly cutting. It's a government that's putting the human rights of illegal migrants ahead of the human rights of the women and children of this country. They can appeal and appeal and appeal on their status because of the human rights laws we have. When someone can frame your entire policy framework as prioritizing foreigners over your own citizens, you've lost a political argument before you've even started defending it. The Reform UK press conference that sparked the controversy wasn't just political theatre. It was a calculated assault on Labour's weakest policy area. A Reform UK conference in Westminster has ignited fierce controversy after party politicians made contentious statements about migrant crime statistics during a GB News panel discussion, proving that sometimes the most effective political strategy is simply telling uncomfortable truths that everyone else is too polite to mention. What's particularly devastating for Starmer is that Pochin isn't making abstract policy arguments. She's talking about real communities, real safety concerns, and real people forming vigilante groups because they've lost faith in their government's ability to protect them. You can't spin your way out of that with clever sound bites and media training. The cultural argument Pochin is making cuts to the heart of British identity in a way that traditional politics usually avoids. When she talks about an invasion on our culture, she's not just discussing immigration policy. She's talking about fundamental questions of what British society is and what it's willing to tolerate. It's the kind of conversation that makes focus groups uncomfortable and pollsters reach for stronger coffee. Starmer's problem isn't just that he disagrees with Pochin, it's that he can't effectively argue against her without appearing to dismiss legitimate concerns about women's safety. When your political opponent can frame the debate as, "You care more about illegal migrants than British women," you're fighting an uphill battle with a broken weapon against someone who's brought artillery to a knife fight. The 6-vote victory that brought Pochin to Parliament is starting to look less like a statistical fluke and more like a harbinger of political change. When someone can win by such a tiny margin and then immediately start landing political body blows on the Prime Minister, it suggests that maybe the British public is ready for politicians who say exactly what they think. Consequences be damned. Thanks for watching UK Pancakes. Subscribe because British politics just got a whole lot more interesting with politicians who actually say what they mean.